Well, hello everybody. Thank you for having me. It's good to be with all of you. I want to thank you for the work that you do around the country. And I'm sure my fellow governors, if they feel about you the way I feel about the Delaware Workforce Investment Board, would certainly express their gratitude as well. You know, I think my most important responsibility as governor is to have a very clear perspective about how the world around us is changing and what those changes mean for the people that I serve and for what we have to do in light of those changes. And we live at a time when there are two major forces that are remaking our economy. These two forces have the potential to do a lot of good, but if we don't understand them and respond appropriately, they also threaten the prosperity of our nation. The first is the emergence of the digital age. It has brought amazing innovations to improve our quality of life. And throughout history, the kind of increased productivity that these innovations have brought has led to more wealth and opportunity. That's number one. And number two, in a global economy, export markets and foreign direct investments have meant more jobs for Americans all across the country. But these forces, digital technology and the global economy, also threaten to leave many of our people behind. Workers produce nearly twice as many goods and services as they did 25 years ago, but middle-class incomes have not grown. In fact, they have shrunk. Now, a couple of leading professors up at MIT have described this new era as the second machine age, in which more tasks are automated and where computers are increasingly able to make better decisions than people. And like in the first machine age, which was the Industrial Revolution, the potential of this era, this new era, is enormous. And it's expanding all the time. But you know, the crucial difference today is not only the speed with which technology affects our everyday lives, but also how innovation is changing the role of people in our economy. And while the inventions of the industrial age relied on increased human labor, many of today's inventions displace the need for human labor. And jobs that once guaranteed a stable career are now outsourced to other countries or handled by new technology. And this, of course, is where all of you come in. We are in a global war for talent, and it's one that is growing. According to Gallup, there are 3 billion people in the world looking for jobs, but there are only 1.2 billion jobs available. We know that jobs will be created where entrepreneurs can find a workforce with the abilities that they need to grow and to succeed. And there has never been a better time to be somebody with the right skills, but you could argue there's never been a worse time to be somebody without those right skills. And this is not a passing trend, this is the struggle of our time. We can't fight that future as much as we would like to. We've got to embrace it, we've got to adapt to the new circumstances, and we've got to help our businesses and our people thrive in this new era. It's a little difficult for me to speak when you're out there talking. So we are only going to be able to thrive in this new era if we expand our workforce and if we rethink how we train our people. You know as well as I do that today's jobs don't look like the jobs of the past. Few high school graduates can count on a good paying factory job or a stable career with benefits and a comfortable pension. By 2025, at least 65% of the jobs in my state will require training beyond high school, but only 40% of my workers have that today. And the numbers are pretty similar across the country. And the result is that employers cannot fill openings fast enough in growing fields. You know, as I do, that for too many years we relied on a strategy that has become known as train and pray. We train people and we pray that they'll find a job. That's not meeting the needs of our businesses, and it's not meeting the needs of our people. So we've got to change. That's why I recently announced a new goal called the Delaware Promise. 65% of our workforce will earn a college degree or a professional certificate by 2025, and everybody will earn a high school diploma. Tennessee and Oregon have set similar goals, and governors across the country realize that we can't be successful if we stay where we are. And this challenge calls for some major shifts in the quality of and access to our education system, from early childhood all the way through higher ed. We have to work hard to expand access to higher education. So we're going to continue to invest in Delaware, and I imagine across the country, in scholarships. And in Delaware, we're one of only 2 states where high school graduates can get a 2-year degree at no cost. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary of that program. We just announced a new initiative called Pathways to Prosperity, which will establish partnerships with employers, with universities, our K-12 system, to create career pathways in key industries. We already have high school students who are taking hundreds of hours of specialized instruction and hands-on training at our community college. They graduate high school with a high school diploma, with college classes under their belt, and with hard, tangible certificates proving what they know. We've already launched career pathways in manufacturing, and we're launching them in hospitality and in computer science as well, and we're expanding to financial services and healthcare. We have doubled in just 1 year the number of high school students who are taking college classes. We've doubled over a decade the number of high school students passing the AP classes, and we've gotten 100% of our high school seniors who are college ready. We've gotten 100% of them to apply to college. 100% were accepted, and last year, 98% enrolled. I just stepped down after 3 years as chair of an incredible organization that was started in Delaware about 35 years ago, and now is doing work in more than 30 states across the country, called Jobs for America's Graduates. This program takes the students who are at the highest risk of dropping out of school, assigns to them a job specialist throughout high school, and in some cases now starting in middle school, and in urban, suburban, rural, Native American schools. The success rate year in and year out, 90%. These are the kids who are at the greatest risk of dropping out. 90% plus graduate from high school a year later, 80% still in school or working. It's a remarkable program. Remember that name, Jobs for America's Graduates. And if you go back to your home state and you don't have that program, then call and make sure you start it in your state. We also know that if we're going to succeed in preparing our people, we have to recognize that college and a 4-year degree is not necessary for everybody. We have amazing partnerships, and I'm so glad that there's so many people here today from the business community, because the bottom line is government cannot do this alone. Workforce investment boards and institutions of higher education cannot do it on their own. We need you. We've got a couple of great examples in our state, one in the financial services industry, another one in aviation. I would talk about it now, but I'd rather that you come at 2 o'clock. We're going to have a conversation over, I think, in the Georgetown room, where we can talk about very specifically how business, institutions of higher education, and K-12 can partner with government to make sure people get the training that they need to do the jobs that are available in this economy. This also means, of course, starting a lot earlier, and everything from recognizing what the Federal Reserve Bank in Minnesota has said, which is the most important economic development investment that a state can make is in early childhood education, and in just the last 3 years, We've doubled the number of low-income students in Delaware who are enrolled in the highest quality early childhood centers. We're investing in STEM education, and we also recognize that in a global economy, we do our kids a big service if we enable them to do business in a language other than English. So we are now in year 3 in Delaware. We have today we had 1,400 kindergartners, first graders, and second graders who are at school right now. And they spend half of their school day learning in Chinese or in Spanish. They're learning science, social studies, and math in either Chinese or Spanish. Next year we're going to have 1,400 students today. Next year, 2,200 students. We're adding schools and grades each year. By the 4th grade, they'll be proficient. By the 9th grade, they'll be taking and passing the AP tests in these languages. This conversation, we could spend the entire time talking about what we're doing in our K-12 system, which is so critically tied to what you're doing at the Workforce Investment Boards. But I want to mention one other critically important area. And that has to do with the work that we all can do together to provide more employment opportunities for people with disabilities. We have to remember, every governor across the country wants to be the jobs governor. But we are not the jobs governor if we are not the jobs governor for everybody. And I believe the same thing is true of workforce investment. I believe the same thing is true of workforce investment boards. You have a clientele to serve, which is business, which are your employers. But what I am saying today to all of the employers, and I'm focusing on this issue of providing more employment opportunities for people with disabilities, this is not about charity. This is not just about what is doing the right thing for the community. What I'm about to talk about is in your best business interest. This is not an intractable problem. There's a clear path forward. A few years ago, I was chair of the National Governors Association. It's a 1-year term. And there aren't a whole lot of perks with being the chair of the National Governors Association, but the one opportunity that you get as chair is you get to pick an issue for all of the governors across the country to focus on. And the issue that I chose was, in fact, employment for people with disabilities. It makes good business sense. And as many of the CEOs who were involved in our initiative emphasized, employing people with disabilities is better for their bottom line. That's why our initiative was called Building a Better Bottom Line, Employing People with Disabilities. The former senior vice president of Walgreens just wrote an inspiring book in which he talks about experiences that are probably shared in some part by many of the people in this room. He tells the story of a speech that he gave to more than 5,000 Walgreens employees, in which he told them that they were going to build the most efficient distribution center in the world. And they were going to staff that distribution center. 1/3 of the workforce would be people with disabilities, many of whom had never previously been offered a job. And the proof is in the results. Walgreens ended up having 2 distribution centers, one in Connecticut and one in South Carolina, where more than 1/3 of the employees had a disability. And these were the 2 most efficient distribution centers in the company's history. The employees had the right skills, they were motivated, and they were fiercely, fiercely loyal. Now, focusing on employment of people with disabilities is also smart for government. This is an issue of workforce competitiveness. It's part of preparing for an aging workforce, for increasing the number of veterans returning to work. It's about meeting the needs of businesses with skilled workers, because when you focus on the ability rather than on the disability, it is amazing what you can accomplish. This is also about reducing the reliance of this population on government assistance while taking advantage of what it is that they can contribute to their communities. And I'm pleased that under the new Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, it's no longer okay to act as if disability is only the responsibility of vocational rehab. We have an historic opportunity right now to ensure that all programs addressing barriers to employment are accessible. Whether the programs serve disconnected youth, or children from single-parent families, or Native Americans, or rehabilitating former prisoners, there's a subset of that population that has a disability, and they are all part of the process, and access to programs is a responsibility shared by everybody. And I know you're going to be discussing this law quite a bit during this conference, but I want to share a few key points about implementing the law to ensure opportunities for people with disabilities. Employers are absolutely critical to the process of implementing the Act and creating a dynamic and adaptable and inclusive workforce. And under the Act, employers will be able to use federal funds to cover the cost of internships and apprenticeship. For the first time, federal contractors in every state must now be inclusive employers. This change asks them to take action affirmatively to recruit, to hire, and to retain people with disabilities. And when you put together your team, there are a lot of stakeholders that should be involved. These include not only Voc Rehab and workforce agencies and labor, but also people from education and transportation and health. The disability community itself and businesses that include people with disabilities, including your state business leadership network, should be involved. Education should be involved because of the role that teachers and high expectations have got to play in successful transitions into the workforce. Transportation is also a really important element because obviously people have to be able to get to the job. And one of the core commitments of the Act is employment as the outcome of first choice. There are many resources available from a wide array of funding sources, of funding streams that can support employment and training programs. Instead of funding day rehab, healthcare dollars from Medicare and Medicaid can be directed toward job coaches and training programs and other employment efforts. I mentioned this a moment ago, but I want to come back. A critical element is having high expectations for young people, frankly, starting at birth. And instead of preparing young people with disabilities for an expectation of a lifetime on public assistance, we should be preparing them for an expectation of a lifetime in work. It can make an enormous difference. Students who are still in school need to have opportunities to experience the workplace, and there's a strong correlation between early employment opportunities while still in school and their success later in getting a job and succeeding in a job. And another step towards success is having the right data about how your state is doing. Frankly, this was easier said than done, as historically workforce boards and agencies review the data, and people who are not actively looking for work are not included in those data sets. You got important numbers of working age individuals with disabilities in your state who have not been in the earlier information. That information is now available from a number of sources, and I point you specifically to a great new organization. I know they're present here at this conference called Respectability, and they have this integrated data set available. And finally, I just want to mention a couple of models that work. One, Project Search, probably many of you are familiar with it. It exists around the country in Delaware. Our largest healthcare system, Christiana Care, has been a partner in this effort. And Project Search connects a talented pool of young people who have significant disabilities with the needs of an employer through a proven school-to-work program. It's a great program. I highly urge you to look into it if you don't have it already. Their most recent data show that nearly 70% of their graduates achieve competitive employment with an average wage above $10 an hour. It's cost-effective, it is sustainable, it leverages the existing funding streams and the expertise of all the partnering organizations. There's another model which I want to mention, which I'm very excited about, and this is in particular for people with autism. About 4 years ago, I read about a father in Denmark who was on the fast track in the information technology field in Denmark, and he had a son, and when his son was 2, his son was diagnosed with autism. This was not in the father's plan. He didn't expect to raise a son with autism. And the more he learned about his son's prospects in the world in which we all operate, the more concerned he got, because he had the same kinds of dreams and aspirations for his son as we all do for our children. So he ended up leaving his job in Denmark, and he created an organization called Specialister. It's a Danish word that means the specialist people. And he left his job, he created this organization with the purpose of connecting people with autism to employers around Denmark. Now I read about him about 4 years ago in the New York Times. And I called him. And I said, I'm interested in learning more, because we sure have a lot of families in Delaware with autism who have aspirations for their children. Well, to make a long story short, about 2 years ago, he moved with his family to Delaware. And he is now partnering not only in our state, but in states around the country. He is connecting people. His organization recruits and vets and trains employees who can work in data testing and software and all kinds of IT fields. And I don't know that there's a more inspiring visit that a governor can make than to go to a real employer and see our constituents doing real work. Work where they, frankly, for people who for years were never given a shot. But now they have the opportunity to wake up every day. They better set their alarm, because they know that they've got an employer who is expecting them to show up on time. And they go to work, and they're adding value, and they're part of a team, they're part of something that is bigger than themselves, and they're even earning a paycheck. And that's why we are all here. You know, it amazed me when I was chair of the National Governors Association, and I went around the country and I talked to groups about this initiative. And every time I was done, there was a line of people wanting to talk to me. And they said, I've got a 10-year-old daughter with Down syndrome. I have a 15-year-old son who is deaf. I have a niece who is blind. And all we want for any of them is the opportunity to wake up every day and to be part of something that's bigger than themselves, and to work. And we have that opportunity, and I can't imagine there's a more important group in the country to embrace this message than all of you. 30% of working age people with disabilities across the country are in the workforce. 30%. It's a stain on all of us. But there is a way. We know that if we work together, we can change that. We can provide opportunities for people who are part of this talent pool. Again, if we focus on the ability rather than the disability, we can do amazing things. So let me close with this. The work that you all do, I believe, is amongst the most important work that is being done in this country. Because when we think about all the issues that we read about in the press today about a shortage of good-paying jobs and too many people who are not part of the workforce, we know what can be done. We know the jobs exist, and we know the work that we all can do together to make sure people are properly trained. But what it means is we have to think very differently about the work that we do. The economy has changed dramatically. This is why I started with the impact of the global economy. 3 billion people looking for jobs and 1.2 billion jobs available. The global war for jobs, the impact of technology. This is not easy. But it's the kind of work that every one of you, when you go home every day and you think about the people that you have helped and the families who have a brighter future because you took the time to focus on the ability, to focus on the connection with the employer, you are changing lives. That's why we all get paid every day to go to work. And whether you're in a workforce, whether you're on the government side or the business side, I know that when we work together, years from now, there may be different people sitting out there, and there may be a different governor standing up here, but we'll be able to celebrate real progress, the kind of progress that gets us up out of bed every day. Thank you all very much.